got our next speaker here, Glenn Mattis, President, CEO, Director of TFF Pharmaceuticals. There he is. Glenn, I see you're on mute, though. Can you just, there's that little microphone button at the bottom.
Got it.
There we go.
You're all good.
How are we doing today?
I'm okay, Spencer. I understand that you guys are going to put my slide deck up for me. There it is.
There it is. It's the magic. It's the magic. You say and it happens. I'm going to see myself backstage here, and I'll let you have the floor and just tee us up when you want us to change the slides and we'll change the slides.
Okay. Very good. I'll do that. Well, good afternoon. Hopefully you're all having a great conference wherever you are. I saw the last speaker was talking about being remote, so I trust most of us are. So thank you for joining today. I hope you're having a good conference. And I'm here to tell you about TFF Pharmaceuticals. My name is Glenn Mattis. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the company. And in the next 15 minutes or so, I want to leave a little time for questions. Let me give you an idea of what we're all about. So if you can move forward to the next slide. Thank you. I just want to remind you all that we are working under a safe harbor since we don't have any confidentiality agreements with any of the listeners here. Next slide, please. So I've been the CEO here for about 4 years, and TFF is a very unique story. We have a platform technology called thin film freezing, and what that technology does, it has the ability to convert almost any kind of pharmaceutical compound, be it a solid compound, a vaccine, into a really beautiful, inhalable, dry powdered product. It is rather ubiquitous in nature in that, as I said, it works on large and small molecules. And our business strategy is a hybrid. We have a portfolio of products that we develop internally, and I think I'll have time to review those products with you. And we are clinical stage. 2 of those compounds are actually in the clinic. The third about to enter into the clinic in a couple of weeks. Then the other part of our strategy is we take this technology and we partner it with other pharmaceutical companies who want to apply the technology to their assets. We work also with the government. We have a number of government contracts and relationships. And we work with academia, a very prestigious group of academic institutions who are working with our technology to apply it to their inventions as well. It is a very well patent protected technology. We have now almost 100 patents that protect us in terms of our process and our method of use. And also, whenever we do a thin film freezing version of a compound, we get composition of matter. Our internal portfolio is focused on four compounds. We have an inhaled version of a drug called voriconazole. Voriconazole is an antifungal that we are developing it for invasive pulmonary aspergillosis. We finished our phase 1 trial and will be entering into a phase 2 trial by the end of the year that we view as our pivotal trial that's being developed under the 505(b)(2) regulatory pathway. Our second compound, which also has completed a phase 1 trial, is a drug called tacrolimus. Tacrolimus is an immunologic that's given to patients post-organ transplant, heart, liver, kidney, lung. Our indication that we're going for is lung transplantation. And also there, we will be following the 505(b)(2) regulatory pathway. The target product profile for these compounds is that we will have at least equivalent efficacy to the parent compound. While since we're giving a lower dose directly to the lung is a marvelous vehicle for drug distribution and metabolism. To achieve similar blood levels, we will have a superior adverse events and drug-drug interaction profile. Our third compound is a drug that we're co-developing with Augmenta Bioworks. Augmenta 3387 is a monoclonal antibody that we have seen really a wonderful animal efficacy. It's been highly effective. We've just recently did a press release with our animal data and showed that it has activity against all of the known COVID-19 variants. And we also just tested it against the Lambda, the Mu, and the Delta variant. And now we're looking at Delta Plus. That compound will enter into the clinic early next year. And last but certainly not least is our inhaled version of niclosamide. Niclosamide is also being developed for COVID-19 as an antiviral, and we're about 2 weeks away from initiating our first patient in our phase 1 trial with results early in the first quarter of next year. Next slide, please. I've been the CEO here for about 4 years after an extensive career on the big pharma side. And we have a great board of directors that are not only helping us lead the company at the director level, but they have significant content expertise, and they are a working board. And I'm really privileged to have a number of these folks engaged with the company at a very, very high level. Next slide, please. So here's a slide that basically is a snapshot of where we're at. As I mentioned, voriconazole and tacrolimus are entering into phase 2 trials, niclosamide into phase 1, Augmenta into phase 1 early next year. We have a very large portfolio of vaccine opportunities, and the basic value creation premise here is that we have the ability to take solution-based vaccines, for example, the mRNA vaccines that are currently being used for COVID and others. Those are manufactured with an aluminum adjuvant, which requires cold chain distribution and storage. We can convert those solution-based vaccines into powders, and the powder can actually become the vaccine, or it can be reconstituted, totally eliminating the need for cold chain. So we're working in the COVID-19 space, we're working on flu, working on other monoclonal antibody-based vaccines, other antivirals, either directly with other companies or academic institutions. For example, I mentioned the universal flu vaccine, where we're working with Dr. Ted Ross. We're working with the U.S. Army. We have a CRADA with the U.S. Army for monoclonal-based antibody vaccines, for other types of nanoviruses, and other relationships as well. We work in the macrophage area. We have a relationship with Felix, where we're taking their phage compound into a dry powder version. We even work in the botanicals arena in cannabinoids, producing TFF versions of cannabinoids with either CBD or THC. There we have a partnership with Plus Products, where we're currently in the phase of market testing our formulations and hopefully entering into the commercial marketplace late this year or early next. And we most recently signed a contract with the Department of Defense through the prime vendor Leidos to manufacture countermeasures, which can be used by our warriors in the face of chemical and germ warfare. In this case, we're actually creating countermeasures that can be administered through the skin and through the eye. So lots of different shots on goal and lots of different opportunities with our internal portfolio and our external opportunities. We actually have 45 open material transfer agreements. We are with different pharmaceutical companies. We are working with the majority of the top 20 companies on one or more of their assets, all leading to meaningful licensing agreements with these companies. We intend on doing 2 of those deals a year, where we will license the technology to those companies for use with their assets, deals focusing on upfronts, milestones tied to clinical and regulatory outcomes, approval milestones, sales milestones, and ultimately royalties. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an opportunity to get a little bit of view of how this all works. What you see pictured on the bottom left is a solid compound. Actually, in this case, it's tacrolimus. We get that compound, if it is a solid, into a solution by applying approved drug excipients, depending on what the chemical nature of the compound is. Once in solution, we then drip that solution onto a cryogenically frozen stainless steel drum that's suspended with a rod that goes through the middle that rotates slowly. And as you can imagine, when you drip something liquid onto something that cold, it's going to flash freeze. Now, why is flash freezing important? Well, it's important because it captures the drug in a highly active state. So what you get in these wafers that form on the surface of that drum, highly active, almost 100% active drug. In this case, that is tacrolimus, and our TFF tacrolimus is 97% active drug. We capture those wafers in a liquid nitrogen bath, then put them into a lyophilizer. And what a lyophilizer does at very, very cold temperatures, sublimes off any of the remaining volume. And what you get is this beautiful brittle matrix powder on the lower right that in the case of when it's administered to the lung, we encapsulate. We use a commercially available device from Plastiopi. The patient loads the capsule into the device. Those two little blue tabs on either side are connected to microfine needles. The tabs are depressed on either side, and the needles pierce the capsule, and the patient inhales this brittle matrix powder. Again, highly concentrated, allows for really exquisite drug distribution. Next slide, please. Now, the reason I stressed again this rapid freezing is that there are other ways, I'm sure you're aware, of creating dry powders. You can spray dry, you can spray freeze dry, you can nanomill. Those take prolonged periods of time, and the environment impacts the concentration and the impact of those powders. What forms when you have either thermal degradation, shear, or air-water denaturation are microparticles, lower yield, and frankly, they just doesn't work in complex molecules. Therefore, the real advantage for thin film freezing is in the biologic space. Almost all of our programs that we have with partners are on biologics, mRNA, monoclonal antibodies, siRNA, macrophages, vaccines, peptoids, etc. So we are the clear leader and clearly unique in terms of how creating powders can be applied to biologics. Next slide. Next question I usually get is, can you manufacture? And the answer to that question is yes. We are a clinical stage company, as I said. We have 3 partners that are manufacturing our GMP level materials for voriconazole, tacrolimus, and niclosamide. We have 3 partners so that we've built in redundancy and we can supply either clinical levels or commercial levels. And we just started working with Catalent as our biologics partner, working on the augmented compound. Next slide, please. I talked about our business model. We have also should mention at this point, because I'm running short on time, that we're well capitalized. We have over $50 million in the bank, which based on our current programming allows us to run the business through 2023. And we intend to be revenue positive upon closing transactions later this year. So the revenues will come from the partnerships, and then by mid-year next year, 2022, we'll have interim analysis and interim data on our Vori and tacrolimus programs, and we look to license those compounds mid-year next year. Next slide, please. Please skip a few. I'm going to stop on a slide that shows our near-term catalytic events and then open this up for questions. Just forward a couple more, please. Keep going. One more. So we've had a very, very successful year thus far with our clinical programs. In the third quarter, we reported our top-line tacrolimus phase 1 data, our efficacy data on the augmented 3387 work was released. We are petitioned the FDA for an end of phase 1 meeting, sharing the phase 1 results from our voriconazole program. And we're 2 weeks late on our niclosamide phase 1 starting. It'll start by mid-November. We'll get the phase 2 programs for voriconazole and tacrolimus kicked off by the end of the quarter. Our toxicology data on augmented 3387 will be shared, and our niclosamide phase 1 program will be completing right around the end of the year. So our clinical milestones are many. Our transactional milestones are also going to be many and value creating. And with that, I think I am almost out of time, so I'm going to stop for questions. Hopefully this presentation will be up online and you'll be able to see some of the materials I couldn't get to. So Spencer, does that work for you?
Yeah, that does work. We do have a couple questions here. Let me find them. There they go. Okay, well, we got more than a few questions. I don't know if we'll have time for all these questions. Let's get to a couple of them, though. Do you have a timeline on revenue?
Yes. So actually, Spencer, we see this year that we're working towards finishing up a couple of transactions that should be able to provide us with upfronts at the upfront stage, upfront licensing stage, and we also, in some of our more advanced deals where we're working with partners, we are getting some revenues in for the work we're doing, specifically looking at in vivo testing, animal testing, and stability work.
All right, 2 questions from Kimberly. She must be following your story here. 1, how are you tracking for the 2 partner announcements in 2021? And then 2, how is the Plus products rollout going, given their credit protection status?
Yes, so we are actively working on closing those transactions by the end of the year and remain highly confident of that. And with Plus products, we have started testing some of our formulations, and based upon some of that testing, we might be doing some more refining to get it right before we start the commercial launch. I anticipate that work to be done right around the close of the year into the first quarter.
All right, we are up against the clock, so we're going to have to let you run. Glenn Mattis is the president, CEO, and director of TFF Pharmaceuticals. Glenn, thanks a lot for joining us today at the Benzinga Small Cap Conference.
Thanks. Have a great conference. Appreciate the time.